as the weeks went by again, so the second week, the third week, dosage went higher. So they increased my steroids because, again, it wasn't working. And at that point, my bleeding had increased as well. I had diarrhea and I had blood coming out of my stool, and it was just watery blood coming out. And I was then concerned, going, this was not, what it was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And that's when I started to question or just be a little bit more fearful, scared of, what was going on with my body. And I realized that if you want to be healthy, you need to eat healthy food.
All right, gang. Well, today I'm interviewing Shamiz Kachwalla. He is the co-founder of High Carb Health. He provides education and coaching to help clients transition to a healthier lifestyle, focusing mainly on gut disease and helping people heal from ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Shamiz suffered from severe ulcerative colitis in 2012 and was told that he would be on medication for life. At one point, he was told that he needed surgery because his colon basically was not healable. And then he discovered a whole food plant-based diet, and he learned that maybe that could help heal him. And he got on a whole food plant-based diet, and he healed his ulcerative colitis and has not had any symptoms, has not taken any pills. He is healthy and healed. And so I love sharing these kind of stories. Obviously, this podcast may be called Chris Beat Cancer, but it's not just about cancer. It's about healing. It's about holistic health and healing, and focused around diet and lifestyle strategies. And the diet that we see helping people heal over and over is a whole foods diet, predominantly plant-based or exclusively plant-based. And colitis and Crohn's disease are very common. Inflammatory bowel diseases are common. Colon cancer is common. And so those diseases are actually precursors to colon cancer. A lot of colon cancer patients have those diseases leading up to colon cancer. Not always, but it's not uncommon. And there are so many people out there, again, suffering from inflammatory bowel diseases that don't know that they can be healed. They are told, just as Shamiz was told, that your only option is medication and surgery, that it's going to get worse and worse and worse over time. Eventually, you'll have to have sections of your colon removed. Eventually, the whole colon's going to be gone. You'll have to have a bag. In fact, quick story before I bring Shamiz on here. The very first person that I met in 2004, after I adopted a whole food plant-based diet, all raw, right? I was diagnosed with colon cancer. About a month later, I found out about the raw food diet. I got on it. I had surgery. You all know that, many of you. But I got on the raw diet, and I went to a retreat with my church. It was a weekend retreat, and I was very new, right? I'd brought my own food with me, and people were like, "What are you doing? We heard about your diagnosis." And so, I was having these kind of conversations a lot with folks. And one guy said, I said, "Yeah, I'm on a raw food diet right now. I'm just eating fruits and vegetables raw." And this guy was like, "Oh, hey, I know somebody who does that." And I'd never met anyone on a raw food diet. I mean, this is a fringe diet for weirdos and sick people. and and he said, "Oh yeah, I know somebody who's on a raw food diet. He's sitting right over there." And granted, this was like 100 people. This is not a big group of people. And I was like, "Are you serious?" So I go and meet this guy, and I start talking to him, and he's probably 20 years older than me, or maybe even, I was in my mid 20s. He could have been in his in his late 40s or early 50s. And he said, "Yeah, my wife had Crohn's disease, and she got on a raw food diet and healed her Crohn's disease. And the doctor told her there's nothing she could do." And I was like, "This is amazing." So it was like, that was the first real world testimonial of healing on a raw food diet for me, was a woman who healed her Crohn's disease. So having said that, so this is kind of special for me because it just ties back into my story. And so Shamiz, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm excited to share your story and encourage people. How are you?
I'm great, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. And my mum actually is a really big fan of yours, and she found you during my journey. And it's, I think, special to be here because she's obviously going to be listening in. And, you know, she's the one that actually put me in this position 13 years later. So just want to shout out to her.
That's
Hi, mum.
amazing. What's her
Um,
name?
Bina.
Bina. Hi, Bina.
So, it's been great, and for mum to obviously come across you and all the amazing things that you've done for yourself and so many other people, showcasing the power of plants, and that too raw for that matter, because as we all know, people think that this cannot be done, or even, physicians or, specialists saying that, healing is not possible, I mean, and this is the story that we always get told over and over again, and that was the same for me. I was also told, I was also put in the same position in a hospital bed, thinking, what can we do, or what alternative or what truthful way of healing is out there. And luckily for me, we found that, and I'm so grateful. And thanks to God for giving me this opportunity, giving me the second chance in life, because I wasn't, doing very well 13 years ago in hospital, and out of all places, it was in Japan. So, language barrier and all sorts of other issues. So it's funny how things turn out, and I'm just grateful to be here and share my story.
Yeah, and I want to get into it. I want to dig into it and extract the details, the juicy details. But before I do, there's one other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, which is that, you know, I do these interviews because there are people that are struggling that I know can be reached and encouraged and helped from your story, right? By your story. Every cancer survivor or healing story that I share, it's like, because I know there's somebody out there that needs this encouragement, and it's more than one person. But also not just for patients. I'm, you know, I'm seeing more and more physicians waking up to nutrition. And I think it's exciting, you know. I know that there will be doctors and nurses and health practitioners that listen to this and watch this, that this may be their first time ever hearing someone that healed ulcerative colitis and or Crohn's. And so that's exciting to me too, because I really do think, it's you can't blame doctors. They're trained, they're given this very narrow sort of set of criteria, and they've kind of put the blinders on them in med school, and they're told these diseases are incurable, right? And if you're told that in med school, you believe it, right? Well, that's just what they told me in med school. They're incurable. And here are the best drugs we've got, and here are the best treatments we've got, which is, surgery eventually. And so that, this is what you're told. This is the truth about this disease, or this class of diseases. And so I'm just excited to be sort of chipping away at the just false belief, right? The conventional medical paradigm that chronic diseases cannot be healed, and that they're not caused by diet and lifestyle, because most of them are, right? And once you know the cause, you can find a solution, right? It's like, hey, this is a cause and effect world. We know the causes, and unfortunately, there's a lot of money in treating disease, not in healing it. And so that's what shapes medical curriculum, is what generates money for the industry, and that's surgeries and medications. So, okay, so let's jump into your story. 13 years ago, what are the symptoms that you were experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, symptoms. I think when you have a sort of chronic disease, you don't really know what's going on, first of all, and you start googling stuff, and you just go and go, what's going on? Like, you're paranoid, you're panicking. For me, it started off pretty mild. Like, I had just a few more bathroom trips, maybe 3 or 4 in a day compared to maybe one. And I had a little bit of blood in my stool, had a lot of cramping or like abdominal pain as well, which I was kind of a bit concerned about. I didn't think too much of it though, during that time because I felt like maybe I ate something that I shouldn't have, right? And I think that's something that everyone faces when they have some sort of gut problem is that, oh, did I eat something wrong or did something happen? And it's funny that we think about this because that's not necessarily told to us, right? When we get down the track that food has nothing to do with it. But yeah, it was very mild. Like I didn't it didn't stop me basically from doing the things that I was doing. I did feel a bit more tired. I think it was that was probably fatigue was there a little bit more than I usually would have, but it wasn't like super bad. When I went, I think when I went to the doctor to ask him, what's going on, and this was like I said before, it was in Japan. There was an English speaking doctor, thankfully, and it was hard to communicate obviously what was going on, but luckily
Were
he
you
kind
living in Japan or visiting?
I was living in Japan, yes. I was living and working in Japan as a English teacher, and you know, I'd always wanted to live in Japan and live have I knew how to speak Japanese, so it was really awesome to be there. And so the doctor actually said, "Okay, well, we need to get you checked because I don't know what's going on from what you've told me, so we're just gonna put you in hospital for a week and observe you." So that's what happened. I ended up going to the hospital the next day. I scooted there with my scooter, and yeah, like I didn't think very much of it because obviously I was in good hands. The doctor said that everything will be okay. They did a sigmoidoscopy initially to see what's going on, and they diagnosed me with mild colitis. Um, so I didn't think too much of it. I was like, okay, and they said we'll just keep you in here for a week, um, and we'll see what's happening with your symptoms and with how your body goes about doing certain things. And they put me on the usual anti-inflammatory drugs. Obviously, the diet as well with in hospital. I think in Japan they have a specific colitis and Crohn's diet. By the way, I think it was like a half-boiled egg, some rice, some miso soup, and some fish. Well, that's what I was fed, and I think they gave some carton of milk and yogurt and things like that as well. And I think those.
It's actually surprising. Let me interrupt you because it's surprising that they would keep you in the hospital for a week with a diagnosis of mild colitis. Like that does not happen in the US. If you get a diagnosis of anything, they're not keeping you. They're just like, here's your diagnosis. See you later. You know what I mean? Unless it's like life threatening.
Mm.
So the fact that they would keep you in there and monitor you and feed you, that's definitely a much higher level of care than you get in the US.
And I think that's what we do seem to think that Japanese healthcare is obviously a notch above. A lot of people think that that you know it's better there than anywhere else. I mean, they are a lot more structured, and they all have there's certain ways of doing things, which is great. But of course, not helpful in the way that for me it didn't work. But I think another reason was because I was a foreigner, a gaijin, right? So I think they wanted to be a little bit more careful, and because I was employed by the government too, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I think they wanted to basically care for me, which is great. I was happy about that, and I was happy that I was taken care of,
Yeah.
um, and I felt safe. I felt safe in the doctor's hands
Yeah.
because they know better, right? And we don't know anything. I didn't know what ulcerative colitis or even colitis was at the time, and I was Googling. I was like, "What is this? This is a weird name. I've never heard it before." I never knew
So
anyone with it.
higher level of care and extremely attentive, high touch, but not necessarily solution that they didn't really necessarily have a solution for you.
No, and I think that's where we don't realize that when we think we're going into this hospital for care, it's almost like sick care, not health care, and
Right.
we've got people there that are just there, like nothing's really going on, and they're keeping them there, and it's like I didn't feel out of place. It did feel strange, because they didn't tell me anything as well. Actually, like I think the communication barrier is there, but they didn't tell me anything, so I had to kind of do it myself. I had to go get my clothes and get my laptop because I was like, "What am I going to do here?" I'm going to be bored. There's nothing to do here in this ward, gastro ward, and I actually had one of those pocket Wi-Fi things as well, so I could use the internet. And I was like, "This was a lifesaver, really," because I didn't know what else to do. Um, but I mean, look, I'm happy that they took me in, and that was something that I respected. And I think respect culture over there is very like you respect things in Japan a lot, and people respect you, and you respect people, and especially elderly. So doctors are respected there a lot. Doctors, surgeons, and medical staff, and things like that. So for me, I was, again in safe hands. I think one of the doctors did mention that you know you're going to be out of here in a week. You'll be fine. And so obviously they put me on the anti-inflammatory medications. Nothing really worked. And I don't know if you've heard about Yakult, the little yogurt drink. It's in Asia. I think other people might know about it. But I asked the doctor, like, can I drink this little yogurt thing? And he's like, yeah, yeah, go for it. And I was like, oh, cool. So I kept smashing that down. I kept drinking that little yogurt thing because I thought, probiotics or something to do with, gut bacteria, and that's what it was renowned for.
It's almost like a little kefir type drink.
Yeah, I think it's very well known in Asia, Yakult, and I didn't really think of it too much. I just, kept drinking it, and I think that actually made me worse because
Hmm.
dairy in there was obviously a dairy product, and obviously we know that dairy is very harmful for the gut and not really meant for humans. So for me, I was like, let's just get this in me and let's see what happens. And also the food, it wasn't really that pleasant, was pretty bland, but I was just like, all right, this is what they're giving me. So eventually, things started to get worse because yeah, my body wasn't necessarily responding as well as they probably would have liked, and my bowel movement started to increase from three to four to about 5 to 6, and there was urgency as well
While you were in the hospital?
while I was in hospital. Yeah,
Mhm.
so the frequency started to ramp up, and I was kind of like, hey, what's going on? And sort of asking the doctor, like, when I'm gonna get out of here. I don't want to be here. I'm a 23-year-old kid, just wanting to explore and do things, and here I was stuck in hospital. And yeah, doctor said, "No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Just a little bit more time. Just give the medicine a little bit more time, and you should be out of here. No worries." And little did I know that that was, 5 weeks down the track. I was not in a good shape.
Wow. So they wanted to keep you for a week, and it turned into 5 weeks.
Turned into 5 weeks, yeah, and it was
And then at the
horrible.
end of the 5 weeks, what did they tell you?
Well, it was either going to be surgery or take an immunosuppressant medication, which had a lot of side effects and all sorts of things. And I kind of was like, I mean, for me, I was pretty much dead. Like I did not have any life left in me. Basically, life had been sucked out of me. I was laying there just on the hospital bed, going, you know, is this it? Like I didn't have any energy. I couldn't even talk.
Did you
Um,
lose a lot of weight?
35 kilos in hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came in hospital about 70, 72. Ended up being about, yeah, 35 to 40. And that was all under the doctor's care because they stopped feeding me as well. So I think that was just to make sure that the medicine sort of would kick in. And yeah, they sort of didn't give me any food for, I think it was 2 weeks.
And what did you start out? What was your weight at when you started?
Yeah, 72, around 72 kilos.
So you're like 158 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, around that.
That's
Yeah,
just for my the American
yeah,
audience,
that's
is
right.
you're like 158, 160 pounds, and you lost how many?
I lost around 30 to 35 kilos. Yeah,
So you lost around 70 pounds. So
yeah.
you were under 100 pounds.
I was under 100 pounds. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
and
that's pretty scary.
very scary.
Emaciated.
Very scary. Yeah, emaciated. I literally you could see my spine, you could see all my bones. I didn't have anything left. And that's because I started to get worse and worse and worse, right? So from week 1, they put me on anti-inflammatory drugs or mesalazine or 5-ASA. Then that week went by and nothing really changed. They also actually, I forgot to mention that they gave me a suppository as well, an enema. And that was probably one of the worst things that I've ever experienced, putting this pipe up my rectum and just pumping it, put this white liquid inside my butthole, and I was just like, that does not, feel good. And the nurse actually was like, "Do you want me to show you how to do it?" And I was like, "Oh, no, no, thanks, I'm okay." But it was just weird to think that this is what I have to do for the next like couple of weeks, like inject this thing up my bum, and just the feeling, and like this wasn't what I signed up for. Like I didn't think that it was going to be like this, and of course you just do what the doctor tells you to do because that's what you don't know any better, right? And for me, I was oblivious to so many things, and I trusted the doctors. I trusted it as anyone would.
I think it's likely that if you had not gone into the hospital, your disease would have progressed much slower than it did. It sounds like it accelerated rapidly based on the treatments they were giving you. They were just backfiring.
Well, I think the medication didn't work. Yeah, and my body was responding in a completely different way to someone else that has this condition. It's almost as if my body was fighting the medicine or not really letting the medicine do its job, because the body does the job. The body does all the healing, not medicine, right? So I think, I was a very special case. I don't think they probably have had someone like me before, or they may have, but it felt like I was someone else. Like they didn't. I mean, at the end of the time that I was there, the doctors were puzzled. That they were kind of questioning, what's going on. And obviously, as we know, as we talked about, surgery was the option there. But just leading up to that, they all sorts of medications. Well, they tried to give me all sorts of medications. The next step was steroids, so prednisone. They you know, started me off, I think, was on 40 mg. I think that's the normal dosage that you give someone to stop symptoms, and it works pretty well most of the time, prednisone. But again, it didn't work for me, and my bowel movements went from about 5 to 6, like I said, to 10 to 12. Um, and this is all uncontrollable bowel movements. I didn't have the ability to hold my stool, so I was running
Mm.
to the toilet, and that was about probably 10, 15 meters away, and I was carrying the drip as well with me, so it was just like getting up, going there to the toilet, like every however much or how many times, 10 times a day, wasn't very comfortable, and just feeling like I was like, this is weird. I came in and I was not, going so often, and now I'm going twice as much. And so that was when I was kind of like, this is weird, like, why is this happening? Again, asked the doctor many times, like, what's going on? As the response was just, the medicine, let the medicine work, or the medicine's going to work, just hang in there or be patient. I was like, okay. As the weeks went by again, so the second week, the third week, dosage went higher. So they increased my steroids because, again, it wasn't working. And at that point, my bleeding had increased as well. So I had diarrhea, and I had blood coming out of my stool, and it was just watery blood coming out. And I was then concerned, going, this was not, what it was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Um, and that's when I started to like, question or just be a little bit more fearful, scared of, what was going on with my body. And of course, communication wasn't there. And also the doctors not necessarily, telling me what was going on, because they probably didn't know either, or they couldn't tell me because they didn't know, you know. Um, and I started to, yeah, like think about, is this, why is this happening? And I called my parents as well, and I said, hey guys, like, I think you guys might need to come here because this isn't, um, you know, a simple or a mild case of colitis. This is getting quite severe. Um, and they flew over actually because I told them like this is not cool, and I was losing weight, right? So they noticed that as well on Skype, as we were Skyping and talking online. Again, the doctors had no response for me. They just said, look, your body's not responding to the medications. We're going to do more tests and more tests, and obviously blood tests and things like that. And they were obviously focusing on my CRP, which is that inflammation marker, and that was quite high.
C-reactive protein.
That's right. Yeah, C-reactive protein, and it was quite high, and they were kind of concerned, obviously. And so then the last thing that or the steroid that they gave me, they sort of gave me the last dosage, or the dosage was the highest I think that they were able to give me. I think it was 80 mg of prednisone, and that still didn't work. And the next sort of couple of days, I literally went downhill. Um, my bowel movements had increased to 20 plus, and just I didn't know what was going on really. I was just like, this is weird, and I was fatigued, I was tired, I was in pain. There was painful cramps. Obviously when you're bleeding, there's going to be pain. There's going to be your body's going to tell you that something's wrong, and I was just you know lying there going, what is going on with me? What is going on? And I was Googling everything and trying to find like a way that, can anything be done about this condition? And then, you know, the, my heart sunk because I read online that, you're going to have to take medicine for the rest of your life. And the doctor then backed that up as well. When he came in one day, I said, when am I going to get better? And he's like, well, we're still trying to see, what's going on with your body. We're still doing tests, but unfortunately, you're going to have to take medicine for the rest of your life. This condition that you have means that, you're going to have to control it with medicine. And that, made me, it put a knife through my heart, because here I am, 23-year-old kid that, I used to be a sports person. I used to be an athlete. I used to, play all these amazing sports, rugby, tennis, cricket, everything. And here I was thinking, I'm going to have to be on medicine for the rest of my life. Like, that does not add up. That does not feel good, and it just felt strange. And they didn't have any answers for me. I didn't know what else to do. And my parents then flew over from New Zealand at the time. And they saw me and they were like, what's going on here? Because obviously 3-4 weeks ago, I was Skyping them, I was talking to them online, and I wasn't that underweight. And then when they saw me, they were like, this is not the son that I know. And my mum and dad were telling the doctors, like, what's going on? Why has he lost so much weight? And obviously asking the questions, and the doctors didn't have any answers. They said, this is, he's not responding to the medicine. That's all they could say. And of course, I didn't know what to do either. I was just lying there in the bed thinking, is this it? Is this what my life is going to be like? And my mum was also frantically searching online and thinking, there's got to be a way out. She's always been a person that's stood strong in our family as well, and just been able to just be there for us, like, and really, she's very spiritual, and she knew that this was not the outcome that we were going to see, especially her son. And she started looking on Google, and this was, I think, the 4th week. And she was looking on Google and she found this book called Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's. And we started reading this book, and this author, David Klein, he was a raw foodist. He also had ulcerative colitis for a very long time, actually. And he managed to heal himself, through a whole food plant-based diet. And we started reading this book. We ordered it on Amazon and started reading the book in hospital. And we were like, what's going on here? This person is saying that this can be, treated, this can be cured, or, and we were just, there was hope, right? We were just astonished at like how this could be, because we've been told constantly by the doctors that no, this is lifelong, you're gonna have to take meds. And so to have this book say something else and to give us hope was incredible. And for me, that kind of gave me a little bit of a spark, right? So we found that book because the doctors at that point had said to me that, you're not getting better. The colon is much more inflamed. It's much more ulcerated than it was when you first came in. And they were concerned. So I did a total of 4 colonoscopies or 4 scopes in hospital. And the third one was the worst one. I had ulcers about this big throughout my colon. And they thought that it was actually going to be perforated. So they were actually concerned about perforation because they tried to do the third colonoscopy and they couldn't get past my rectum because they were like, it's way too inflamed and we're scared that we're going to perforate it. So the only option now that you have is surgery because your colon is too inflamed. And obviously at that point, I think I was going 40 times a day. So from 20, it had increased. Again, steroids, still on anti-inflammatory drugs, still on steroids, but nothing was happening. I also was on antibiotics as well. And, at that point, my mum was like, this is just so concerning. Like, what is happening here, really? And they gave us an option. They said, look, okay, if you don't want to do surgery, because my mum actually refused the surgery. She said, no, like, we can't perform surgery because, he's been in your care for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And, I don't see him getting any better. So what's surgery going to do? And so they said, okay, well, there is this other drug called tacrolimus, which is an immunosuppressant drug. It's what they give to heart transplant patients, suppresses your immune system. And it kind of worked. So my bowel movements reduced from about 40 to around 20. So it literally just shut down my immune system. So my body was obviously trying to heal and trying to get rid of this medication that was being pumped into me, and it suddenly just shut down. And so my symptoms lessened to the extent that I could, start to actually talk. And I was in nappies, by the way. My mum was changing me because I couldn't get up and go to the bathroom. I was that weak. And, that was horrible. Just being there in the hospital bed, not being able to function, not being able to use my legs because I was just way too weak. Yeah, the muscles had completely gone. And so they gave me this immunosuppressant drug, and I took it for the first 2 days, and I felt horrible. I started looking at the side effects of this medications, and I was actually Googling it because obviously we had this book here, and the book was explaining that, medicine is not going to help you in the long term. It's poison. And to allow your body to heal, you can't put poison in it, so as you say. And so this immunosuppressant drug helped me a little bit, right? It worked to a point where I was able to just, be able to talk and do more things, but it didn't solve the problem, right? It reduced the amount of bowel movements, but it didn't solve the issues. My parents then were like, okay, like we've taken like we've gotten rid of the surgery aspect. We can, start looking into this more. So my mum bought a juicer and a smoothie maker in hospital, and we started juicing because celery juice, greens, apples, and we started doing that. We started, nourishing the body finally. And of course, again, they didn't feed me anything. So all this time, like for the last 2 weeks, I hadn't taken any or solid food, and I was on a I had a catheter in my neck actually, because the intravenous from the wrist can only take a certain amount of calories, right? So they needed to get a larger vein to feed me. And that was a funny story in itself, because the doctor was like, "Oh, there's about a 95% chance that I will make it right, and if it doesn't work, then I'm going to have to get this other person to come in, or the other specialist to come in and stitch the vein up or whatever." Couldn't remember exactly what he said, but um, luckily the procedure went okay, and the catheter in my neck was fine. Um, but that was it was horrible just to have this thing in my neck as well. I mean, there were so many things as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that they had this LCAP system as well. That a needle in my vein on this arm and another needle on my vein on this arm. They had a machine as well, and basically they were drawing out the blood, cleaning it, and then putting it back into my body. So some of your viewers may know about that as well. I mean, it's a blood filtration thing that they do,
Yeah,
and
it's sort of like dialysis in a way.
similar to dialysis. Yeah, it's called LCAT, and in Japan, it was actually something that was used for patients that had inflammation and things like that. So I had to do that 11 times, by the way. I had to sit there for an hour while the blood sort of filtered through this machine, and it didn't do anything. Did absolutely nothing to me. And the guy who came in, who built this machine, actually was there, and I actually became friends with him because he's like, this will work, and unfortunately it didn't. And eh, it was hard. That was a very traumatic experience, and I had needle marks for probably a good year still there. The scarring was still there, and it was a good reminder actually of me being in that place. So anyway, so after the juicing, right? So I'm taking medicine, I'm taking this immunosuppressant drug. I've looked at the side effects, and I've gone, this is not something that I want to take for the rest of my life. And obviously the doctor had said that, this is something that you're gonna have to do. This is another drug. He did mention some of the side effects, but obviously just didn't really explain fully. But he said, we're gonna have to monitor your liver and make sure that things are going well. And that obviously scared me because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, why do you have to do that? Because if this medicine was okay, then you shouldn't need to do any of that stuff, right? And I started reading up on it, and skin cancer, not allowed to go in the sun, all these adverse effects, and I was like, this is not me. I can't do this. Like, I'm not someone that wants to stay away from the sun because, I'm an athlete. Like, I have to be out there in the sun. The sun is energy. The sun is healing. So I saw that and I was like, okay, we had to think twice about what we were going to do next. So obviously the book was mentioning there that, medicine is poison, and, it's not going to heal you, blah, blah, blah. And so we decided in hospital that we would discontinue that medicine. I wouldn't recommend anyone do this because it's not something that, you need to talk to your doctor about this, but we didn't have any other choice. We were so desperate that, I'd been under the doctor's care for 5 weeks, and I'd got to this point where I was nearly dead, withering away. And so we had to make decisions for ourselves, for my future. And so I stopped taking the medicine. I was friendly enough with the nurses that I could say to them that, like, I'll take this later. I'm not feeling very good at the moment. So they would just drop it on my table. Luckily, I was able to do that, and I'll just flush it down the toilet instead of, ingest it. So while I was doing the smoothies and the juices, we actually talked to the dietitian in hospital, and we said, look, the food hasn't really worked, for me, that you've been giving us. And because I'm a foreigner, can we please have these vegetables and just give me some steamed potatoes and steamed vegetables? And the dietitian was like, okay, okay, we can do that, but where are you going to get your protein from? And, all these things. So we had a discussion with the dietitian there. And luckily, we sort of came out where the hospital were making food for me specifically. And this was something that, you know, you're very well aware of where, they don't really care in US, the famous sloppy Joe, as you mentioned. Um, but they didn't in Japan, they were, again, I think, respectful of what had happened to me, and they had realized that, you know, this could be something that or we could work with them, which obviously, you know, I was shocked as well because I'm like, how like we're lucky enough to be able to we're blessed enough to be able to, you know, have this conversation at least and, figure out a way that we can get these steamed veggies into my belly. So we then figured out that this is what we need and this is how much they gave me, and just getting some food in me was priority number one, right? Because I hadn't had any food for such a long time, and it was almost as if I drug fasted, right? Like I didn't eat anything. I was just drinking like 3-4 liters of water a day with medicine going inside of me. So for that first bite of a banana that I ate was incredible. And
I'm
that was the
sure.
start that was the start of my healing journey, right? Like, the ability to know and find out that nutrition plays such a massive role in how the body works. And of course, talking to the dietitian and the doctors there that, does it diet have anything to do with this condition? And obviously their answer was no, it doesn't. And of course, you know, we questioning that and thinking, okay, well, what this person is saying, and this Dr. David Klein suggesting that, food has everything to do with the digestive system. I think any person would think that, and so we started applying these principles, juicing in the morning, smoothies, and then having that steamed vegetable dinner. Um, and slowly, my body started to come around. So my bowel movements actually reduced significantly from 20 to 10 to then 5. And I actually started to see formation in my bowels, and obviously routine blood tests were happening, and all my numbers started coming down. I think they were doing blood tests every couple of days, and my CRP marker started coming down. My C-reactive protein marker started coming down, and the doctor was shocked. So then he said, "Okay, we need to get you checked. You seem to be doing better." I was able to actually walk now, so I walked past the nurse's office, and they all looked at me saying, "Wow, like he's able to walk now." And I feel like the celery juice, the smoothies, giving me this nutrition, right? This nourishment that I needed, and I hadn't had all this time, and so there was almost like a soothing going on in my gut. And so eventually we did a colonoscopy in I think it was the sixth week, end of the end of the fifth week, and the doctor came back with a smile on his face, and he was very happy, and obviously that was a relief for us, wasn't it? Because he came to us with the results, and he said all of the ulcers have gone, and you have very, very mild inflammation in your rectum. And we were over the moon, you know.
And tell me, wait, how much time transpired?
So this was in at the end of the fifth week. So from, I think it was the third colonoscopy, which is the one they couldn't go past my rectum, which was I think in the fourth or fifth week, or middle of the fourth or fifth week, to the end of the fifth week. So about a week and a half, I would say. My body,
Things turned around that quickly.
things started to turn around that quickly, and I think there's another aspect to this though as well. So it's not only the food that we were eating, but there was a lot of hope. So my mindset, so the fact that I was like feeling better, I had a little bit more energy. So little things like that, the positives that were coming, my symptoms reducing, and we also had a lot of people praying.
Yeah.
And, that in itself has huge power. And when people are praying for you, it means so much. And that in itself, I think, really carried me through this process and got me through hospital. And so the colonoscopy showed no ulcers, very mild, little to no inflammation in the rectum. And the doctor actually was so happy that he discharged me in that week because he said that you are now responding to the medications. Okay. And of course, we knew that that
You weren't
wasn't the
taking
case.
it.
I wasn't taking it. So it'd been about a week since I stopped everything. So even the steroids. So they switched me from IV steroids to oral steroids, which again I was so happy about because all of these events happened because I feel like God was looking after me, right? And to think that these things, I was able to get away with these things, or not get away, but be able to do these things in a place where that does not happen usually with patients was a miracle. And for me, I was over the moon because the pain had gotten so much less. I was able to like actually function as a normal human being again. Because previous to the point in time, I was so sick. I was in so much pain. I had to take painkillers. Like there was a painkiller, I think just under morphine. There was one that they were giving me. I don't know what it's called. Again, everything was in Japanese.
Right.
So it was hard to communicate. Even my parents found it really hard to communicate. I knew a little bit of Japanese, but obviously medical terms, never crossed my mind. Um, but in that last week, when my doctor discharged me, we said, okay, let's just get the hell out of here. Let's get out of here and go back to New Zealand and just reassess and, you know, let's bring this all together, right? Like there was so much going on and so much that I'd been through that it was like, we needed to get out of there. And the doctor actually mentioned to me that these types of medications that you'd be taking weren't available in New Zealand. So he gave me a suitcase full of medications to take back with me to New Zealand. And of course, at that time we said, okay, we'll do it. Like we didn't want to sort of create a scene and say, hey, like, no, we stopped medications and things like that. We just kept quiet and just got out of there because I did not want to step foot one more in, or, I didn't not want to stay in hospital for longer. And I think I forgot to mention that when they were going to propose the surgery, they said that I'd have to be in hospital for another 2 months because they were going to put a bag, uh, and so for me, I was like, I ain't staying here any longer. This is not, you know, helpful or productive or just even the environment, the energy in hospital. It's almost like a prison when you think about it. You're not allowed to really go outside very much. You're kind of, restrained with this, drip on you all the time. And so I was so happy to get out of there. I was so happy to just walk out those doors, um, and to think that there was hope, there was a way out, that I didn't need to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't need to take medicine for the rest of my life. That was huge. And this book gave me so much inspiration, that I had a second chance in life. And I'm so grateful to God, so grateful to so many people that stuck by me and, allowed to or supported me through that process because, we could have easily just succumbed to what the doctor was saying and succumbed to surgery, and my life would have been completely over. I don't think I would have been able to function with this bag. And I don't know how people do it. And that's why um we started High Carb Health to try and inspire people. Obviously it didn't end there though. When I got back to New Zealand, I obviously had a lot of cravings, right? I started doing things that I probably shouldn't have. I didn't realize that uh, I needed to make sure that my food intake and you know, my condition still needed some work, and I wasn't I wasn't in the clear yet, right? And so I unfortunately went back to eating foods that I shouldn't have. Went back to eating animal products, for example. I went back to eating fish and just, for about a good month because I had a lot of cravings. I had stopped eating those foods for 2 months, in hospital, and I wanted to eat certain things. I was craving things. I was addicted to
Sure.
these foods, and we all are, aren't we? We're addicted to these foods because that's what we grow up with. This is the condition. We're conditioned to eat these foods. So, unfortunately, my body started to flare up again. So after a month, after being in the clear, so after not having any bowel issues, obviously my bowel movements returned to normal. And I was healthy. I still haven't put the weight back on as much as I probably would like, but I thought, eating these other foods would help that. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I actually, w- yeah, went back to these foods that caused the problem and I got a relapse, right? So that's when I realized that food has such a massive role to play with gut disease. And at that time, I was very new to this lifestyle, right? Didn't really understand what a whole food plant based diet was until I started reading more, until I started educating myself, until I started seeing your stuff. Because that's when my mum started to find, you guys and your story and the doctors that are out there promoting a plant based diet. So Dr. Clapper, Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Esselstein, T. Colin Campbell talking about the China study. We started reading all this stuff, and I kind of was like, this is where I need to be because the food that I was eating before caused these symptoms, right? And so when we're talking about inflammation, when we're talking about inflammatory bowel disease, eating inflammatory foods are not the way to go. And I realized that these foods were creating the inflammation in my body, and that's why I got a flare up again, you know. And unfortunately, at that time, I victimized myself a lot, right? Because I was like, why did this happen to me? Why was this, why did I get this? None of my other family members have this problem. And, things started to really go downhill for me again because I realized that I couldn't be the same person as I was. I had to change. And I had to realize that change is necessary. And, you know, the food has such an important role in how the body works. And I realized that the whole food plant-based diet is a preventative medicine diet. Prevention is the next best cure, right? And when you start eating foods that are healthy, fruits and vegetables, the juicing, and even the raw foods, as you say, and as what you did, this was what I was also eating. So putting in the nourishing foods to allow my body to recoup again, right? And I had to do it all again. I had to do it all again. I realized, and I feel like God put me through that position again to make me realize, to cement that idea that if you want to be healthy, you need to eat healthy foods, you know? And obviously it took around 6 months to get better again. And, that 6 months was probably the most amount of learning that I have, understood about myself. I realized what I needed to do and how I needed to live, and put myself in a position where I'm not creating disease, right? And I'm not creating inflammation in my body. And so by eating a whole food plant-based diet and plant exclusive diet for that matter allowed me to recoup again and to actually thrive, right, on this lifestyle. And that's when I realized that, the protein thing, that you don't need to eat these other foods to be healthy. And since then it's been about 13 years. And I've done so many things that I wouldn't have even thought I was capable of doing even before I had colitis. I've run marathons, run ultra marathons. I've done a 70.3 half Ironman, all on plant-based foods. Not needing any animal protein or animal foods to fuel me. And I think, you know, going through the healing made me understand that this food is so healing and is so powerful that if you can go through healing and reverse disease by just eating foods, then what else can we do? And that's the test. That's what I did to myself. I said, how can I do this? What can I do better? And how can I show that this food can do so much more than healing? It can do all these other things as well. When my body was ready for it, I was ready, and I started to, you know, do these things and allow my body to perform and thrive. And I was so grateful for that. I was sitting in a hospital bed or sleeping in a hospital bed, not being able to move, to then, ending up doing ultra marathons and things like that. Like, it was amazing to think that that was even possible for me to do that. So
It is amazing because you were so close to dying. I mean, you were dying, you were wasting away in the hospital. And it really is, I mean, a testament to the faithfulness of God that he made a way for you, to escape, because you really were just going down, you were going down fast. And it's awesome that just within less than 2 weeks that you had such a big turnaround in the hospital. I mean, that feels miraculous. Usually, even on a whole food plant-based diet, on a super healthy diet, it can take a little while for people to get well. But in some cases, and you're not certainly not the first case I've ever heard, but in some cases, yeah, the turnaround is quick, right? You just see, it's not like everyone's cured in 2 weeks, but usually within a few weeks, yeah, you see some improvement. For you,
mm,
you saw a lot of improvement, which was awesome. And I think that's the big encouragement, folks, is like, listen, if you just give yourself, I always say give yourself 30 days, right? Minimum, right? Just treat it as a 30-day experiment, get on a whole food plant-based diet. Doesn't have to be all raw, but if you want to, you could do all raw for 30 days. But the point is, like, just commit to that whole plant foods, preferably all organic if possible, but eat just all the fruits and vegetables you want to eat, and see what happens. And just commit to it for 30 days. And if you have a health challenge and you have noticeable symptoms, and you should see some improvement, if you want, get your blood work checked before and get your blood work checked after 30 days and look at these inflammatory markers. Like you mentioned, C-reactive protein's a big one, but you should see a lot of changes, positive changes in your blood work really quickly. And again, you just have to do it, right? This isn't something that someone else can fix for you. You have to do the work. And by doing the work, that means you have to eat the food. You have to make the healthy choices 3 times a day, right? And then in between meals, right? If you're having snacks, you got to make the healthy choices with the snacks, fruits and nuts and seeds and stuff, and not the candy bars or whatever. It really is remarkable how quickly you can see improvements. And so your story is awesome, man. I just love it so much because, again, like I said at the beginning of the interview, I mean, there's a lot of people out there with colitis and Crohn's and bowel diseases that are on medication right now that are not getting better. They've never been told to change their diet, or they've been told changing your diet doesn't matter and it won't help you. So they've just been deceived by ignorance, right? By medical professionals, typically, that are just ignorant. They've never helped anyone heal it. And so they don't know how to heal it. They just know how to treat it. And, so, I love that you said, you got this one book, and let's mention the book again. What was it called?
it's self-healing colitis and Crohn's by
Okay.
Dr.
So
Dave.
Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's by David Klein. You had one guy's story, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need a clinical trial. You don't need a giant study of 50,000 people, right? You just need one person's successful story to change your life. I had one person's story, George Malcolmus, that inspired me to take control of my life and my health. You had David Klein's story, and now your story, right? Now you've already put it out there, but I'm sharing it because I want your story to encourage people and give them that spark of hope that they can heal as well. And this is how we're doing it, folks, is we can't look to the government or to the hospitals or the doctors, medical institutions, or whatever. Like, we have to look to each other, right? We can help each other, and we can learn from each other and from our successes and our failures. And so I celebrate your success, man. It's Shamiz, it's awesome, dude. It's so cool. I mean, it's like, I know what it feels like to be dying, brother. I mean,
Mm.
like, I have felt my life waste away. I know that feeling of despair and hopelessness. I've been so weak where I could barely walk. And I know what that feels like. I mean, it's rough. It is really hard when you have all the energies drained out of your body and you can barely think straight. You know, you don't know where the solution. It's like you have a little bit of hope. There's got to be something out there, but you don't know where it's coming from. And I'm also thankful to God because I know He has spared my life. He spared your life for another day, and hopefully for many years. And I'm just so glad that you're using it to help other people. You know, that you're just putting your stuff out there. And I want to make sure people know where they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add to that you were also a huge inspiration for us as a family as well, because there was nothing else out there back in 2012, talking about people healing. You were actually a great hope for us as well. Not only David Klein, but yourself. When my mum found you, she was like, wow, like this guy has beaten cancer, and it's now, cancer is right up there. It's the benchmark when it comes to healing, or in a way that, if you have cancer, it's like the last stage, and so for you to be able to do that, inspire so many other people, is phenomenal. And for me as well, to take that and use that as fuel to get better. And I think you've been able to provide people with this platform, and it's amazing that, you you've been able to do what you do, then take that and share it with others. So, it's amazing. And we thank you for doing what you do as well. And, we're just so blessed and grateful to have this opportunity to do these things and to share the knowledge, and as to why certain foods are going to be healing, and why, going to the doctor, or, again, in emergency situations, it's very necessary to do that. But when it comes to chronic disease, as you say, lifestyle, diet and lifestyle always will trump medicine in that way. And that's what we want to do. We want to try and share that, this is not a life sentence, right? Like, we don't have to be sick if we don't want to, and we need to take that initiative. Don't let someone else control your life. Take control of your life and do what's necessary. If you want to get better, that's all it takes. Like, do whatever it takes to get better, and don't make excuses. I mean, I think Lance Armstrong was also one of my inspirational um, you know people that just allowed me to rethink, like, that this could be possible, right? And I think that's another thing, that, like, you're constantly being told that there's nothing else we can do, there's nothing else we can do. And people like yourself, people like David Klein, and other people's stories are so powerful, because it gives us the opportunity to think, hey, actually there is another way out, there is a better way than the traditional mainstream. Yeah.
There are more ways to heal than we realize. And man, it's especially gratifying and just really sweet to me to hear that, that I had some little part to play, in your story. Just putting my story out there encouraged you, and that was that's why I did it. You know what I mean? That was my entire, intention, was like, I just thought, I know there's people that could be encouraged by my story, and I'm going to try to reach them. And it's amazing. Like when you put it out there, and you're doing this now, it's like when you put your story out there, you just have no idea. You have no idea who it's going to reach, and it will be encouraged or given a little bit of hope by it. And so, um, that's just awesome, man. It's so great. I do not get tired of hearing that kind of feedback, you know? It just like makes it all worth it, right? It's like, yes, that was why I started doing this. Sometimes you get for, you know, I get caught up in just all the minutia of
Mm.
doing all the stuff we do as a team. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, we're just trying to encourage people. That's all we're trying to do. You know, we're just trying to give people hope and encouragement, and obviously the practical information, right?
Mm.
It's like practical action steps that people are implementing to heal. And this is such simple stuff, folks. It's whole fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, whole grains, just food from the earth that God made. It's so good for you. The more of it you can eat and the less of the man-made processed food and junk food, the better. That's the starting point right there. And then fresh air, sunshine, exercise, getting a lot of sleep, going to bed early, and then forgiving people who've hurt you, keeping your stress low. You know, it's like you can just build on it. But food is the gateway drug. This is my I don't know. It's something that it's an epiphany I had years ago, but I say it a lot. But food, and especially like the raw food diet or a plant-based diet, it's like the gateway drug to radical life change, right? That's like the first thing that a person can do, right? And if they're willing to do that thing, like change what you eat, it unlocks this potential that you didn't know you had, right? It unlocks this like, wait a second, if I can do this, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Right. And then like you are off to the races, right? It's like then it just becomes this you're on your healing adventure now, right? It's like what else can I do? What else can I change? What else can be good for me? Like, you know, and then you just start digging and reading and researching and adding new things and subtracting things that you realize are counterproductive or harmful. So yeah, that's when the process becomes fun, and your hope, right? Your hope really starts to snowball. You know, you start with that little spark, but it just grows as you start to feel better and learn more and get more encouragement and reinforcement. And you see other healing stories, like it just all builds on itself. And so, man, I'm just proud of you. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. You're reaching a lot of people and encouraging them. And it's just great to be on the same team, just doing what we're doing. So again, people, how can they connect with you?
All right. So yes, so highcarbhealth.com. That's our website.
Highcarbhealth.com.
High Carb Health. Yes. The reason why we decided that name is because that was a while ago. Then we changed our name, but there's all this low carb, high protein, and I think we just don't understand what carbohydrates are, and it's not a food; it's a nutrient. And I think we're missing the point there when we're thinking that carbohydrates are bad for us. And yeah, there might be certain carbohydrates, the refined carbohydrates, that are not the best for us, but there are worse things out there, than carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are essential for the body. All our cells run on carbohydrates. That's what fuel us. And if we're not eating enough carbohydrates, we're not fueling our body. And so that's why we say High Carb Health. So Instagram, High Carb Health, YouTube, High Carb Health, and Facebook, High Carb Health, and of course, highcarbhealth.com on our website. And if you'd like to get in touch, obviously, if you know anyone that has ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, then definitely, um, you know, reach out to us. And we actually are launching something next year, which is going to be really um, just something that we have been working towards for the last 10 years, and just to allow people to find another way of healing. And we've created a new platform and a new program that is going to be launching next year as well, which is exciting for us. And it's gonna change the world and change, how people see ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and I'm really excited for that. And me and my brother, I think he interviewed you on our channel.
Yes.
We're really excited to, provide this education for people so that they can do it themselves. And as you said before, like, we are, hope and inspiration for those people that are struggling. Um, I mean, we know what it's like to have this condition. We also know what it's like to not have this condition, and to come out of it and to have all the energy in the world to do extra things. Uh, and it's it's amazing what we can do, with the right knowledge behind us. And so that's what we want to pass on. We want to pass on that knowledge to people that are struggling and that don't have any other option. And I would say to people that don't put yourself in that position first, start reading, start educating yourself before, you go down the surgery route, or, you know, even better, when you get diagnosed, start to look at other things, not necessarily what the doctor suggests, because we know that that might not be the right path to go down in the long term. So, it's much better when you prevent something than, when you've got it and then you deal with it. So, yeah, prevention is the next best cure. And for people out there that are struggling, there is hope, and hopefully this story of mine can also, help other people. And that's what we set out to do, right? To try and share that there are different ways and better ways, I guess, to get better and, reverse disease, and to get your life back, basically, and instead of go down the same old traditional ways of taking medicine and, dealing with sickness, because we're not here to be sick. We're here to be healthy, and we're here to thrive, as human beings on this amazing earth, and, inspire and give, and, be helpful. So it's amazing what we can do, when we're given a chance.
I think the big message is that healing is possible. Healing is possible, right? You may not have heard it from your doctor, but we're telling you, Shamiz and I are telling you, healing is possible. Let's just start with that belief, and then off you go, right? Start learning, reading, and researching, like listening to people who've healed. Now, if you're new to this channel, I've interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of people who've healed all types and stages of cancer on the Chris Beat Cancer podcast. And you can find those at chrisbeatcancer.com or on Apple or Spotify. And I've also interviewed Brooke Goldner, who's healed lupus, Dr. Sarai Stancic, who healed MS, Robbie and Cyrus, who have helped a ton of people reverse type 2 diabetes, and they manage their type 1 diabetes with a whole food plant-based diet, high carb diet as yourself, eating lots of wonderful whole food carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, and delicious starches. And so, yeah, there's a whole world of resources out there. But this interview, again, I want to point everyone to High Carb Health to connect with Shamiz and learn more about that program. Please share this. If there are people in your life who have digestive disease, whether it's Crohn's or colitis, diverticulitis, and any of these inflammatory bowel diseases, irritable bowels, uh, you can listen to me. But if you want to listen to someone that has conquered and healed that specific type of condition, High Carb Health, connect with them, refer your friends and family members to them, send them this interview, and say a little prayer that they actually watch it. And hopefully if they watch it, they'll get encouraged and they'll dive in, and then take control of their life and their health. So again, thank you, Shamiz. This has been so great. Love to you, brother. Awesome story. Keep up the great work. And thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.